Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, back to the Valley of the Judged. I am your one and only gaming monk, better known as Mildra, and with me as always is my good brother here in the temple, the head of Distorted Illumination, and the man who's had a running bet with the Grim Reaper for the last few years, good brother Monarch.
After a day of listening to America Fuck Yeah and Real American, and annoying all of my coworkers this morning with those songs on repeat, we're here to talk some weeb shit for the 4th of July.
Mm-hmm. And I know some might say, wouldn't you want to do something more patriotic for the 4th of July? As far as I'm concerned, the fact that we keep grinding on these things is patriotic. And the fact that we are that in covering stuff like this, covering weeb shit, we rebel against the ivory tower attitudes. That is also very American.
Also, this is what happened to land on the wheel.
Yeah, we already had to do some delays due to outside factors and a bunch of other housekeeping moments. I'm not having that repeat a second time, delaying this even further, especially when I announced everywhere the launch date for this episode. But and granted, we've already been delving into weeb shit with Curse Brand Chronicles, which all of you have no excuse to not try because it's fucking free. I will keep reminding you of that. But now we come to Mysteries of the Yokai. And one of the big reasons why I put this on the wheel, and I'm glad it landed on this, is for a lot of people, the quintessential feudal Japan in tabletop form is either Legend of the Five Rings, or if they're an older head, Oriental Adventures back in the AD&D days. Those are nice and all, and don't get me wrong, I love L5R to death, but L5R is doing far more political intrigue. And sometimes that's not exactly what I want. So it's good to have variety, much in the same way that I don't want every fantasy cyberpunk to just be Shadowrun. You know, as much as the greatest trick that the devil ever pulled in tabletop was convincing the world that one game can run everything. Or that one game owns an entire genre. And, in that same vein, you and I have had our issues with people treating the Western fantasy pastiche as if that's the only sort of high fantasy that exists.
That said, this is going to be my first time kind of looking at a more yokai focused game. I was going to say, like, just your East Asia mythos type of fantasy.
But there's parts of East Asia within Pathfinder's world, so
That feels like a cop-out to use that, though. It's there.
though this isn't your first freeform setup, because Mystery of the Yokai is a little bit more freeform than some other games. Now, there is the question of, is this going to be another Valhalla because of that freeformness? No. And yes, the Valhalla adventure game is going to continue to be our whipping boy.
Oh, believe me, if I ever put together like a tier list, the bottom tier is going to be Valhalla tier.
Mm-hmm.
It may only have one game in it, being Valhalla, but it's Valhalla tier.
Well, when we did the Heisei Kamen Rider ranking thing, we had the only bottom tier entry was Ghost. So, precedent. But for this one, we are going to be going into a bit of the introduction. And this does mean that this is going to be a bit of a lighter episode. If only because I don't want to spoil character stuff just yet. Especially given how character works. So I think would you mind reading the prologue?
Yep. From the notes excuse me. Sorry. From the notes of Tominaga Asai, former head priestess of the Myaku Grand Shrine. Since time immemorial, people have spoken of encountering strange apparitions in the night. They appeared in the lonely places, in liminal spaces, distant from the bustle of civilization and far from the sight of observers. Some people called them yokai, and they introduced themselves as such when the first spiritual kingdom sent their ambassadors. In the coastal provinces of the West, they are sometimes called Ayakashi. Others know them as Obake or Bakemono, a changing thing, whose spirit has transformed them into something new. I knew them first as Mononoke. That's the name I was taught in my studies at the Myaku Grand Shrine. They are apparitions, spirits, and creatures that wander the shadows, many of them invisible to the unaided eye, and with natures and personalities as different as one person to the next. But it was the lost ones that most preoccupied my shrine's concerns. So lost and twisted in their ways, they turned wicked. Such Mononoke presented the most danger to all innocents, spirit and mortal alike. To this day, they endanger the balance in our world. It is wicked Mononoke such as this that I was trained to confront. Not simply by bow or blade, though my fellow priests and I are not strangers to the heat of battle. Nor are we to drive them out by wielding the magics bestowed upon us by our powerful kami benefactors. I was taught to first investigate, to question, to ask. For the vast majority of the yokai in the world are as nuanced as you or I, and even the most wicked are anchored to our world with troubles akin to our own, entrapped within burdens of passion, regret, longing, or sorrow. Force without purpose will only aid the problem. One does not extinguish flame with fire and heat. It can only be quelled by equilibrium. Only through its complement of calming water can a raging flame be brought to harmony. We are but one of the groups who recognize that we must not only help humans, our supernatural neighbors are also in need. Together we form the bridge between the worlds. We walk between them. It is our duty to ensure balance and protect the innocent. This is a really good prologue. Not only is this setting up what we're going to expect from just the overall themes of the game, but it's kind of also telling you how you're going to be making your characters. This isn't going to be straight combat.
Mm-hmm. In this regard, I would say the analogs that I would use for Mysteries of the Yokai are more in the vein of, to a certain extent, Princess Mononoke, though it's not very strong. A stronger case would be Ayakashi Samurai Horror Tales and its spin-off Mononoke. Which, have you seen Mononoke?
No, I have not. I know about it, but I've not watched it.
But that is more of a horror mystery. I suppose Otogi Zoshi could also be a good example. Basically, the pattern is that this is more about the supernatural end of classical Japan than it is about the samurai conflicts. If anything,
now again, combat's inevitably going to become part of it, as we read through that nice little prologue. But that seems more like, by design, the last resort of what you're doing.
Mm-hmm. I mean, combat could happen in, say, L5R, but said combat was going to be very brutal and very unforgiving. And by that I mean in combat in L5R you can go down in a couple hits. That's how unforgiving it can be. Even at high levels, you're still just a couple hits away from getting dropped. But with that in mind, we have the next spot, which is of course Mysteries of the Yokai. Japanese folklore is filled with mischievous spirits, heroic adventures, and insightful parables. Mysteries of the Yokai is a TTRPG set in an alternate version of classical Japan, one where epic tales are set to unfold with you as the focus. Your characters will experience a mythic world, walk the line between human and yokai, and create new legends of their own. Players will create and take the role of original characters, heroes with capabilities that set them apart. The rest you can already figure out. There is a sidebar that's worth noting called Japan by Another Name. In the time period of the setting, Japan was known primarily as Nippon. You may notice the name appears in several places throughout the manual. When Nippon is used, it refers to the Japan of the setting instead of real-world Japan. When discussing real-world Japan, its modern English name will be used. And then a bit of a thing on what a role-playing game is, which we always skip because it's kind of redundant. Although it is worth noting that it does hint at some of the more extensive mechanics that are going to be in the game. But right after that is what you need to play Mysteries of the Yokai. Obviously, 3 or more players, one person being the game master, pen and paper, at least 3 standard 6-sided dice. But it's easier if everyone has their own set of 3 dice. So, I feel like I've been recommending way too many D6 based games over the last few months, and I have to add this one because Well, to put things in contrast, we're running Sword World on Saturdays, except for this week, which uses a D6 system. One of the games we did in the middle of that was Cloudbreaker Alliance, which also uses a D6 based system. And then after we do Sword World, we're going to end up doing Robotech the Macross RPG, which also used, you guessed it, D6s.
Now, I'm pretty sure we've covered another D6 game.
Yeah. And I do want to clarify, games that use D6s but also use other die, that doesn't count for this.
That said, I'm pretty sure like the section using the book, we will also skip because I think we all know how to read a book.
I will note that I do like that the PDF has hyperlinks.
Who does it? I didn't even pay attention. It has hyperlinks.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
That is a very nice touch.
It's been what? This and Shattered?
Yeah. As far as the ones that you and I have covered, there's been a few more that Zan and I have covered that do so as well. It's always nice to have.
It makes me happy.
Mm-hmm.
That said, though, I do think we should go over using dice real quick, just so we have an idea of how the dice mechanic game in this works.
Yep. Misters of the Yokai uses dice to resolve many character actions taken by the players. Standard 6-sided dice are used, abbreviated as D6. There are 3 ways that it's used. D6, sometimes with a modifier, such as D6 minus 1 or D6 plus 2, self-explanatory. 3D6, often with a modifier. Roll 3 die and add them together. A attribute setting is the one that's often used. And lastly, D3, sometimes with a modifier, which is basically doing a D6 and cutting it in half. And as far as introductions go, that's about it. And Dragon is asking, but does it have an index? And in fact, it does, though it's not at the very back, but there is an index. And that index has hyperlinks.
A little weird it's not the very back, but yeah.
Yeah, but at the back end there's a series of last chapter is a series of references. The first is a glossary, which is basically the lexicon. Then a rules summary, which I should note the core mechanic for this is 3d6 plus modifier versus a target number. Let's see, a note on character creation, then guide sessions and campaigns, then content lists, which does not have hyperlinks. Then credits for Kickstarter backer content, and then it does the index.
Okay.
And then after that, you have the credits that are read as if it's the people in the city of Toyotomi. Then credits for playtesters and proofreaders, production credits, all of that. As well as giving credits to each illustration in the book and where it is, a reference and bibliography. Then comments from the creator, a blank page, the character sheet, and then the pre-gen character sheets.
There's also a couple nice little cheat sheets afterwards.
Yeah,
for just organizational purposes type things.
Yeah, and the last page is intentionally left, and a couple pages left blank for printing purposes. I think it's to prevent some things from getting printed the wrong way if you're doing double-sided printing.
Yeah.
But
very nice.
It's very nice, but I feel like maybe I'm way too much of a traditionalist, but I'm of the opinion that the index should be at the very, very back. Maybe,
I agree. But
just before like the character sheet. There's a lot of games the character sheet will be at dead back.
I would say it should go. The very last things are any of like your printable sheets, your character sheets, like the little cheat sheets they have there. Anything for organizational purposes you'd want to print out. I think those are the last ones, and right before those, the index.
Mm-hmm.
That said, that's not really that important.
Oh yeah, but
That's just a little stickler in me that would prefer it that way.
yeah, I do appreciate that there is a clear direction on how things are going to go. I know some might waffle about what era of feudal Japan this is trying to take place in. I think trying to do that is like waffling about what dynasty a wuxia novel takes place in. That's not important. It is only important if the story makes it important. And usually in those kind of cases, it's not that's only important if it's trying to be a historical fiction, and in a lot of cases like this, that's not what the setup is trying to do. This is not trying to be historical fiction, and I've had issues with how some people treat the word historical accuracy in some very distinct cases.
It matters as much as the writer makes it matter.
Mm-hmm.
That is my take on historical accuracy.
It's also one where you have to pick your battles accordingly. Because otherwise you end up focusing on, well, the wrong things.
Yeah.
You know, well, to use a more modern game, the whole suppressor thing. Yes, everybody knows that suppressors don't make little zip noises in reality. However, when you're using movie magic logic, there's an expectation that, yeah, they do. So it's one of those things that has to be taken into account. But I know this was a very, very short stream, but there's only a few pages, and I didn't want to dive headfirst into character creation yet. I'd want to save that for next week, because this is a game that uses a more freeform, more point-based type of character creation that you'll see very soon. And because of that, I'd rather have that dedicated to its own episode. So I guarantee the next time we're back, it's going to be significantly longer than just 30 minutes.
Oh, yeah.
But we will be back next week with the character creation part of Mysteries of the Yokai. And I have a feeling we're going to be in for some fun times in this one.
Indeed.
But
And also, though, before I forget, because we tend to forget mentioning this sometimes, Adventures of the Monk and the Monarch should be more consistently put up on the 5th. So tomorrow you can check out on my channel me and Monk here talking about fan hacks.
Mm-hmm. So and once that's up, I'll be putting up the link in the server and all the other relevant places. But until then, on behalf of the good brothers present and not present, my name is Mildra. I am your gaming monk. Stay fucking frosty, everybody.